Hi, I'm Emily. I live with epilepsy, but I don't actually let that bother me too much. I work, used to be full time, but the pandemic has put a little dent in that. So right now I'm actually working as a fine art photographer, mostly naked women, actually, and dealing with the craziness of being a mother and trying to keep a business afloat, but also advocating for people with invisible disabilities. Mine is epilepsy.
So, Emily, I can't thank you enough for sitting down with me today and sharing your story, in turn, allowing me to share it with everyone that's watching. I do want to talk about the things that you mentioned in your introduction, but first, let's start this conversation the way I start these interviews. What do you think people's first impression of you is?
That's interesting because I actually get lots of different reactions. Anything from, housewife when I'm out with my kid, which is totally understandable. She's 4 and I'm very involved with her. But then when I'm at work, because I do shoot fine art photography, mostly nudes, people have a very different opinion of me, to thinking I'm like some kind of wild child or rebel or something. And I get lots of weird questions at work, which to me, it's just an art form. And then if people find out or see, I have a little medical alert bracelet tattooed on me. So I get lots of weird judgments when they see that. Like they think I'm mentally impaired, or they'll start yelling like very slow, like I can't understand them, like, oh, hi, how, and I'm like, that's not needed or appropriate in any way, shape, or form. So I guess it depends on where you meet me. If you meet me at the park, or you meet me at work and I've got my fancy clothes on, or so I don't really know. I'd love to meet myself for the first time and see what I thought, because I have no idea. If am I in my sweatpants? Am I in a blazer? Am I at work? In my boss mode? I don't know. I have no idea. You can tell me later.
Well, I'll tell you now. You and I met through a community group on Facebook for our college that we went to, and people that were there and graduated in the same, span of time. And I shared a post into the group about this channel and about these interviews, and you were inquiring about sharing your story and your mission. And so I personally thought you were friendly and um, warm and very empowered. That's how I felt from my first impression. So
Oh, thank you.
take
I'll
that
take
with
that.
what you may.
That sounds good. I'll accept that. Thank you.
So I want to talk about the photography and the fact that you shoot fine art photography, mostly nudes. How did you get into doing that?
Well, I actually went to school for literature. I am a sometimes writer, but actually, I have because I have intractable epilepsy. So I have a little bit of brain damage from having too many seizures, medications not working properly, hitting my head too many times. So words have become, which is, it's a sad thing for me because I love language. And you can hear my ums are actually pauses because I'm looking for the right word. I tend to do spoonerisms and things where I have a form of aphasia. So where I'm thinking of a word, like I'll say stupid things. Like if I'm trying to think of the word like giraffe, it's a simple thing. Everyone knows what a giraffe is, but my brain will go, long necked spotted puppy. What is it? And it's obviously giraffe, but I'm trying to like find the right, and it's because I have some brain damage in that area of my brain that tries to find the correct word. So my passages of trying to make associations have become they're just fried, essentially. Like too many seizures, you're just going, I know what it is, I have it here, I just can't get it out. So, and I'll also reverse just letters in words. So it's really frustrating to somebody who's been writing and being published since I was 11 to like try and get the words out. So I tried to find another outlet, and I picked up photography as a hobby, but it, didn't really pursue it. It was more like, let's do this little happy place thing. But I was actually working for a nonprofit in their marketing and communications department. And I always have a side job going on. It's just this thing. I apparently have too much time. And I saw an advertisement for a place and they had bad copy. And I was like, I should get pictures done. That would be fun. It was a boudoir studio. They did mostly pinup at the time. And I had noticed that the advertisement they put out was kind of bad, but their work was beautiful. And I had boudoir pictures taken when I got married, pinup style, because it's something my husband had liked. And so I sent them an email because I'm an awful person and was like, your work is beautiful. My last pictures were terrible. I wish I had seen this. Also, you need to hire a new marketing person. And she just emailed me back, oh, you think you can do better? And I was like, yeah. So I actually went down and met her and I started freelancing for her as a communications person, actually, just as a side gig. We get along really well. She's one of my best friends now. But one day her associate photographer had quit. And so she was taking all of the work. And I was doing my typical kind of bossy, oh, you should do this, you should do this. And she just handed me the camera. Oh, you think you can do better? And she thought I was going to bomb, to like shut up, Emily. Like, here, oh, you think you can do better? But I did really well. And she was like, oh, I was going to make fun of you for doing a terrible job, but you're actually really good at this. Like, do you want to do photography as well? So she fully trained me in all aspects because we do full service there, hair and makeup, and it's an experience. No Photoshop though. We're totally anti-Photoshop. There's enough of that going around. We don't need that. So I quit my high pressure government job to do that full time because it makes me feel so much better. And so I've been doing it ever since. I love it. It's so much fun because you get people who come in for all kinds of reasons, because everyone's reason is very different. It's not they're not the kind of people you would typically think. We don't just shoot models. Actually, I rarely shoot models. And so it's fun. It's a blast. That's my favorite thing in the world. It's just having a camera, making people feel amazing. That's fantastic. So that is my job. And it's always funny because people are just like, didn't you go to school for writing? Weren't you a writer at one point? Didn't you work for the government? Didn't you teach for the government? I'm like, yeah.
But there's something to be said about what you said, meaning making people feel good about themselves and making people feel beautiful. And part of that is why I like to do these interviews, because I feel that being human isn't one size fits all, and every human is beautiful. And every story is important. And if we can connect with someone, and the way you connect with them from behind the camera is so cool and so unique. So we're talking about these photos that you take, and that is definitely something that I would not have known. So what is something then that would surprise people to know about you?
I think how hard it is each day. Because I have disabilities. I have the memory issue. I have intractable epilepsy. And that means that I have seizures that they can't necessarily get under control. So I have some spinal issues. I have some brain damage. They won't be able to control my seizures. And I cope really well. I've had some stressful, high pressure jobs. It looks like I'm functioning at a very high level, and there are days where I'm just not. I mean, there are days where I can't really get up out of bed. On top of all that, I'm still a mom with a household and a husband and 3 dogs, usually 3 dogs. Sometimes I have little stray animals in my house too, and stray children too.
So let's talk about that. So let's get I have a lot of questions, as I'm sure a lot of people do, but how old were you when you had your first seizure and you received your diagnosis?
Okay, so first seizure is debatable. We're not really sure. They're guessing around 11. I went through a phase of a period of time where because they weren't witnessed, and I just had migraines and time period where I was, as a kid, being told, oh, Emily is super smart, but she spaces out a lot, or she's not paying attention. They thought that maybe I was just one of those kids that was, really dreamy, like she has her head in the clouds. But I've had migraines since I was 8 or 9, and they got really bad around age 11. I was probably having seizures, but because they weren't witnessed, or because they're the smaller kind of seizures that don't look like what you see when you see seizures in movies, they weren't diagnosed. But we know for a fact that I was having big seizures when I was 16, because I knocked out 7 teeth having a large seizure, where I had the kind that does look like what you have in the movies. And I hit a bathroom counter, I knocked out my teeth, and I lost 3 days of memory. And then when they brought me into the hospital and did the whole like brain, EEG stuff, and then I had another one in the hospital, and then they were like, oh yeah, she has epilepsy. So I've knocked out my teeth 7 times. So
Wow.
that was when we got the definitive diagnosis, and that's when they started the different medications and all of that to try and lessen those. At one point in my life, I was having around 50 seizures a month.
That's more than one a day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I mean,
But
that's my math skills at work. But I'm a communications major, but I can do math.
Have to remember too, though, seizures don't necessarily look like, big rah, sometimes it can literally just be spacing out for just a second. If you don't know what they look like, you wouldn't know I was having one. I do it all the time and people have no clue. I mean, my husband does because he lives with me and he's seen it, but I had so many in college that I didn't even know were seizures, until later. I got a thorough MRI, and they were like, this area here and this area here and over here, this is all damaged. Like, were you taking your meds? And I was like, yeah. And it's just, nobody had it thoroughly explained that there was so many different types of seizures. You can have an absent seizure where you're just staring off for a second. I didn't know that was a seizure. Like, I just always pictured what you see in movies, it was super dramatic. And I was like, oh, I've only had like 20 of those. And I've been on 27 different medications. And some of them work really well, but then I eventually build up an immunity to it. So, I would love to have this. There is a surgery and that I would love to have for it. But unfortunately, I have seizures coming out of 2 different parts of my brain, and they don't want to cut out 2 different parts of my brain. Sounds bad or something. I smell certain smells. It's a chemical smell. Mine smells like ant spray. Have you ever sprayed like Raid type ant spray? I smell that. And then I will actually see little flashing lights coming off of the left side. And when I see the lights, I know it's really bad. Like, I know that's going to be a bigger one than the chemical smell one. So if I start seeing, like, it almost looks like Aurora Borealis, if I start seeing that, and it's only on the left side, if I start seeing that, I will go and sit down. I used to have a dog, a little Schipperke dog, who I guess could smell them, like seizure dogs do. He wasn't trained. He was just a rescue I had. And he would herd my heels and make me sit down and then jump on my chest until I laid down. Unfortunately, he was very old when I got him, so we couldn't get him fully trained. But sometimes I do notice my pit bull, she can smell them too, because she'll lay across me. But she's also too, I need to stop rescuing older dogs because I should get one young enough to like train fully. But so apparently the dogs are pretty good at smelling them. But those I know. And apparently sometimes I will also just announce. I don't remember that at all. But sometimes I'll be standing there and be like, I'm going to have a seizure. And I don't remember doing that at all.
Well, you answered my next question, because that's what I was going to ask you, was if there was a protocol you kind of have when something's coming on, but you really just answered that, which is really fascinating to me, because like you said, it's not always, especially with, like you say, these invisible disorders and invisible diseases that people can't always see that you have. There's not always something that is known or common it's not always what we see in the movies. It's not always how we think it is. And
No,
so it's really informative and really eye-opening to hear you speak and share this information. I find it really, really informative. What has been the greatest impact to your life with epilepsy? What
not
are hmm?
not driving. I live in suburbia and not having a car. And I wanted to go to grad school at one point, and because I thought I wanted to be a teacher maybe. And then I was like, oh, if there's no public transportation, because public transportation in Southern California is really not good. And trying to figure out how I wanted to, like, but then I'd have to go do hours at this school and then this school. And like, I can't. There's just going to the grocery store is a pain in the butt when you can't drive. And even now with Uber and Lyft, it's still a pain in the butt. I mean, if I want to do anything, I have to arrange a ride or find Uber or Lyft. And I don't necessarily always feel safe on all of those things. Woman, like, don't know who's coming. I've been taught my whole life not to get into strangers' cars. And now I'm calling strangers, being like, can you pick me up? Like,
I,
so
I totally get that.
yeah. And now I have a 4-year-old. And so it's still juggling all of that. So that is the biggest problem with having epilepsy. And even if they were, I mean, they won't ever give me a license, because I have 3 to 5 seizures a week now. And that's good for me. That's great. 3 to 5 is great.
So I have one quick question I want to ask. You said you have a 4-year-old. Was there any like genetic testing or anything that you did before you had is your daughter?
Yeah. Girl, that's not a quick question. I actually applied for foster care and for adoption first. And because of all of my hot mess medical file, they turned me down. So I went, haha, that's a joke, right? Because I taught special ed for a little while, and we sure, like, I'm first aid certified and I'm CPR certified. And my husband is like the picture of health. Like, and he's in, and we took our classes and all of that. And they said, yeah, no, it could be traumatizing, which I could see. Like, it would be scary to see me, but so anyways, we got turned down. Because I was always told not to have kids. It could be a bad time for me. But I like kids. They're funny. They know everything. Like, have you met a 14-year-old? They know everything. And I don't know anything. So I thought it would be good to have one to tell me what to do with my life. But
I'm dying over here.
it was funny. I was actually at an appointment with my best friend, who she used to drive me to my appointments on occasion, and she had chemo, and then she took me to my neuro. And my neuro he had signed off on some of the paperwork for foster care and stuff. And he asked me how it was going. And I told him, and he was like, well, then you have to go home and get pregnant right now, because you're doing really, really well. And so I had to switch medications. We had to do testing. It took 3.5 years and a miscarriage. And then she came early, and I had HELLP syndrome and had seizures through a C-section. That's the short system. That's the short. Yeah. So it took a lot of work. She took a long way of getting here, and we're never doing it again. She will be an only child.
I can respect that.
Yeah.
I can definitely empathize and respect that. But I'm sure that you love her, and I think it's amazing.
She's hilarious and a delight, and tells me lots of funny things every day. I write them all in a book because she's a riot. But
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to touch on one other topic before we round out our conversation. In your introduction, you talked about also being an advocate for people with invisible disabilities. Can you talk a little bit about what you do in regards to that?
So epilepsy is one of those invisible disabilities that will hit you all kinds of angles, but you'll look totally normal. And I really got involved because I have a lot of issues myself. You know, epilepsy has a higher suicide rate. You can die of SUDEP, um, depression, anxiety. But my best friend had cancer and she looked fine for many years. Um, but I've noticed that there are a lot of conditions out there, a lot of conditions where you can just look totally fine, but you need a lot of support for it. And I noticed it a lot at work because I work with a lot of women who have um, lots and lots of things. But you'll have like endometriosis is another one, PCOS. But there are so many conditions that um, people need the support, but because they look normal, they're treated like they're 100% okay. And I'm not a fan of treating anybody like they're 100% okay because you never know what's going on. And I never really understood that. You never know what is going on with somebody mentally or physically. And so I like to, one, speak out about what is affecting me directly, epilepsy. If anyone ever asks me a question about epilepsy, and including in the workplace or on a job interview or whatever, I'm the first to say, actually, yes, I have this problem. Yes, I am disabled, because I don't think it's a dirty word. I don't think it is a problem. Like, if you have a problem, that sounds like a you problem, not really a me problem. But also, so being involved in, if anyone needs support, they're welcome to call me. I tell my clients that we have a little like a group for ex-clients and things. So I always put it in my contracts too. If you need assistance, if you need abilities, if you need any kind of resources, anything, hit me up. What am I doing? Like, I'm here. If you need accommodation, if you need to talk to someone, if you need me to find you phone numbers, if you need anything, go ahead and contact me. Like, I have no problem with doing any of that. But invisible disabilities, I always just think you don't need a cane. Obviously, if you have a cane, that's cool too. Like, I always thought they were pretty sassy. So, but you don't need a cane to be treated with respect. And I'm always very confused by the fact that people have to have evidence for their eyeballs in order to accept that something may not be 100% here. I know I have days, I have spinal injuries, I have brain damage, but if you look at me, I look fine. I mean, I played football this weekend. I mean, that doesn't mean tomorrow I might not be able to use my feet. I mean, that spinal damage goes through my entire spine, but that doesn't mean I'll have a good days and bad days. I don't know why people have to have physical evidence for their eyes in order to believe something. That doesn't make much sense. I mean, if that was the case, then a lot of the things, you wouldn't be able to use your phone because you don't understand how it works. Like, that's not, I don't understand that. And I think that is something that society does need to work a little on.
Yeah, it's happened. I've witnessed it on airplanes. I've had personal experiences. I suffer from ulcerative colitis, and sometimes I'm in pain. Sometimes I don't feel well. Sometimes I'm just having a bad day, and I'll get maybe a disability pass or whatever wherever I am, and people will just look because I'm walking, just like you said, no cane, no wheelchair, no nothing.
Well, young. Yeah, you're young, so that doesn't help either. Right. And it's always very confusing to me. And I'm like, why do you need their medical chart? Like, how about you just go with yes?
Thank you for sharing about how you advocate and why. Thank you also for sharing your personal story with what you deal with on a daily basis and what comes up for you. Also, your fascinating journey in photography.
Yeah, interesting, right?
And it's so, like, that could have been that was like probably the most surprising thing for me. That was really interesting. I kind of look at it like this. There are things that I know that I could never do or have as a profession. That would probably be one of them. The other one is I could never be like a manicurist or something like that, or a massage therapist. It's kind of just one of those things I know about myself, and that's really fascinating. I'm always in awe and admire people who definitely do things that I know would be limiting for me. Um, but since we have been talking for so long, I want to say thank you again for taking the time
Absolutely.
to sit down and share all of these amazing things. And I want to close out this conversation with one final question, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, as you are moving about at work in your personal life, if you encounter other people and had the opportunity to hold up a sign that said one thing about Emily, what would you want people to know about you?
Life gets lonely. So make sure that you are checking up on your friends and your family and your loved ones, because you never know when you're going to lose someone. That's really it. Just be nice and love each other. You never know when you're going to lose people. That's it.